Sit right there. He isn't coming to save you. My name is Arthur Pendleton, and my life unraveled on a crisp October afternoon in front of our home in the wealthy enclave of Crestwood Heights. I am what people call a billionaire, but fortune is a flimsy shield against the treachery of those you hold closest. It was Isabella's birthday. For weeks, I had planned the perfect surprise, a day to show her how deeply she had woven herself into the fabric of my life and my daughter Chloe's. That morning, I'd lied, telling her I was buried in back-to-back meetings. The disappointment in her voice over the phone was a sharp sting I willingly endured, imagining how I would transform it into joy by evening. The plan was meticulous. A sleek new Aston Martin waited at the dealership, adorned with a giant red bow. First-class tickets to the Seychelles lay in my desk drawer, next to reservations at Lucille, the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. But first, I needed my sister, Diana, to get Isabella out of the house so I could set the stage. I trusted Diana implicitly. She was my only sister, the one who had held my hand through the darkest valley of my life. As my car purred through the iron gates of our estate, my heart hammered with anticipation. I had called Diana 30 minutes prior. "Hey, sis, I'm about 10 minutes away. Please tell me you have Isabella ready and waiting outside like we planned." "Oh, yes, Arthur," Diana had replied, her voice buzzing with what I mistook for excitement. "Everything is perfectly set up. She's going to be so surprised." But as my car rounded the final, sweeping curve of the driveway, the scene that unfolded froze the blood in my veins. There, on the immaculate lawn, stood three people I loved more than life itself, my 78-year-old mother, Eleanor, my 13-year-old daughter, Chloe, and my sister, Diana. They were drenched, their white clothes plastered to their skin and stained a grimy brown with muddy, dirty water. They stood shivering, a portrait of utter humiliation. And standing over them, holding an empty bucket, was Isabella. The woman for whom I had planned a perfect day had just desecrated my family. I slammed on the brakes, the screech of tires tearing through the pastoral silence. I was out of the car before it fully settled, the door hanging open behind me. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted, my voice echoing across the vast property. Isabella's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide with panic. The bucket clattered to the pavement. My mother wept silently, her elegant gray hair matted to her scalp. Chloe looked utterly broken, her school uniform ruined. Diana was shaking, whether from cold or fury, I couldn't tell. "Arthur," Isabella stammered, stepping toward me. "I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. This isn't what it looks like." I repeated, my voice rising with each syllable. "My daughter, my mother, and my sister are standing here soaked in filth, and you're holding the bucket. What exactly do you think this looks like?" The sight triggered something primal. This was my child, who had already lost her mother. This was my elderly mother, who had sacrificed her retirement to help me raise Chloe. This was my sister, my lifelong rock. And the woman I loved, the woman I was ready to give the world, had done this. But to understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand what came before. 5 years earlier, I was a different man. By 35, I had built a tech and real estate empire worth billions. Forbes featured me, people called me a visionary, but it all turned to ash the day I held my wife's hand as she took her last breath. Clara wasn't just my wife, she was my anchor. We met in college, built our dreams from a cramped apartment, and celebrated each milestone as a team. When our daughter Chloe was born, she became the radiant center of our universe. Clara was the kind of mother who made magic out of ordinary moments. Her diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, stage 4, felt like the sky had fallen. For 8 months, we fought with every resource I could summon. But cancer is a merciless equalizer. She died on a Tuesday morning, with me holding one hand and 8-year-old Chloe holding the other. The grief was a physical weight. I survived for Chloe, throwing myself into work to numb the pain. My mother, Eleanor, moved in to provide stability, and Diana became a constant, doting presence in Chloe's life. For 5 years, my heart remained in the ground with Clara. I couldn't conceive of looking at another woman. That changed on a rainy Thursday. Chloe, then 13, fell ill at school. With Eleanor at a doctor's appointment and Diana at work, I left a conference to collect her. At the pharmacy, a new pharmacist with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor helped us. She was gentle with Chloe, and her advice was practical and kind. "Mr. Pendleton," she called out as we were leaving. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but your daughter seems like a wonderful girl. You're doing a great job." Her name was Isabella Rossi. In a world of pitying looks, her simple, genuine acknowledgement was a balm. I found reasons to return to that pharmacy, drawn by the easy comfort of our conversations. She was ambitious, saving to open her own community-focused pharmacy, and utterly unimpressed by my wealth. She insisted on paying her own way, her independence one of the many things I grew to admire. Most importantly, she was magical with Chloe. She listened to her, remembered the details of her life, and treated her with respect. "Dad," Chloe said to me one night, "it's okay if you like her. Mom wouldn't want you to be sad forever." Her wisdom shattered the walls I had built. I asked Isabella to dinner. Our relationship blossomed with a gentle, healing grace. She never tried to replace Clara, instead, she honored her memory, asking Chloe to tell her stories about her mother. She brought laughter back into our home. But not everyone was pleased. Eleanor was coldly polite, and Diana was openly skeptical. "She seems a little too perfect, Arthur," Diana would say. "Don't you think it's convenient how good she is with Chloe? Some people are very skilled at telling others what they want to hear." Their doubts planted seeds of unease, but I dismissed them as overprotectiveness. After 8 months, I proposed in the rose garden Isabella loved. She said yes, and Chloe was ecstatic. My family's congratulations, however, were muted and strained. When Isabella moved in, the tension solidified. During a scary, weeks-long illness of Chloe's, Eleanor and Diana essentially moved in, too, systematically pushing Isabella aside and taking over all care. They created a united front, subtly demonstrating that Isabella was an outsider. The breaking point came on the morning of Isabella's birthday. I had enlisted Diana to help with my surprise, but her reluctance should have been a warning. "Arthur, are you sure about this?" she had asked. "You're prioritizing her over the people who have always been here for you." "I love her, Diana. She's good for us. Or she's good at making you think she is." I ignored her. I was so focused on my grand gesture, on my planned speech about making our relationship the priority, that I failed to see the trap being laid. Now, standing in the driveway, staring at my drenched, shivering family, all I could see was the evidence before me. Isabella's explanations were white noise against the roar of my protective fury. "I trusted you," I said, my voice cracking. "I was going to give you everything, and this is how you treat the people I love." "Arthur, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain what really happened." "I don't need 5 minutes. I can see what happened. My family is standing here soaked, and you're holding the bucket." The pain in her eyes was profound, but I was blind to it. "If you send me away now," she said, her voice quiet and final, "you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The only thing I regret is not listening to my family when they tried to warn me about you." A terrible clarity settled over her face. "You're right. You should listen to your family. They clearly know you better than I do." She turned and walked into the house to pack. I sent away the second love of my life, believing I had protected my family. It would be months before I learned the devastating truth from my daughter, that the entire scene had been a carefully orchestrated setup by Diana, with my mother's complicity. The clean water, the dirt added when Isabella wasn't looking, the strategic positioning of my family, it was all a lie designed to eliminate a perceived threat. By the time Chloe finally broke through the constant interruptions and manipulations to tell me the truth, the damage was done. I had chosen the lies of the past over the promise of my future, and the cost was a pain far greater than any I had ever known. The lesson was seared into my soul: sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones most capable of betrayal. And the truth, no matter how inconvenient, always finds a way to the light. The silence in the house after Isabella left was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. For days, I moved through the rooms like a ghost, the echoes of my own stupidity ringing in my ears. The perfect surprises I had planned, the car, the vacation, felt like artifacts from a life that no longer existed, mocking reminders of my catastrophic failure. I confronted Diana and my mother with the truth Chloe had finally shared. The scene was ugly. Denials first, then tearful justifications that curdled into bitter accusations. "We did it for you, Arthur." Diana cried, her face contorted. She was going to take everything. Your money, your attention, your daughter. We were protecting what's left of this family. By destroying it. I shot back, my voice dangerously low. By manipulating a child and framing an innocent woman. You didn't protect us. You imprisoned us in your own jealousy and fear. My mother, Eleanor, sat stiffly, her composure a brittle shell. We misjudged her character, she said, her tone clipped. But our intention was to shield you from potential heartbreak. A marriage built on such a rapid foundation. Don't, I cut her off, the fury so potent I could taste it. Don't you dare cloak this poison in concern. You saw my happiness and you plotted to extinguish it. You saw Chloe's affection for Isabella and you weaponized it against her. I gave them 24 hours to pack and leave. Their departure was a storm of weeping and recriminations, but I stood my ground, a statue of cold resolve. As their car disappeared down the driveway, a different kind of silence descended, one of relief, but also of profound loss. The first step was Chloe. I sat with her in the living room, the space between us finally clear of interference. I am so sorry, baby girl, I said, my voice raw. I failed you. I didn't listen. I didn't protect you from them. Can you ever forgive me? She leaned her head on my shoulder, a gesture that felt both familiar and newly precious. I was so mad at you, Dad. But I'm mostly just sad. I miss her. I know, I whispered, holding her tight. I do too. My second step was to dismantle the fortress of work I had built around my grief. I delegated authority, cleared my schedule, and made a sacred, non-negotiable pact with myself. From 6 p.m. onwards, I was present for Chloe. No phones, no emails, just us. The third step was the hardest, facing Isabella. I didn't go to her pharmacy immediately. I knew a bouquet of flowers and a stammered apology would be an insult. Instead, I started from a distance. I learned everything I could about her new venture, the Rossi Community Apothecary. I read about her partnerships with free clinics, her sliding scale payment system. I saw, with a pride that ached, that she was building the very dream she had told me about in that pharmacy break room, but on her own terms, with her own strength. She was thriving, and the knowledge was both a comfort and a dagger to my heart. After a month of giving her space and getting my own house in order, I knew I could wait no longer. I drove to her pharmacy, my palms slick with sweat. I didn't bring a grand gesture, just a simple, handwritten letter. The bell above the door chimed as I entered. She was at the back counter, explaining something to an elderly man. When she looked up and saw me, the warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a careful, professional neutrality. My heart sank. I waited until the customer left. The air between us was charged with 5 months of pain. Isabella, I began. Arthur, she replied, her voice even. If this is about business, you can speak with my manager. It's not about business. I placed the letter on the counter between us. This doesn't excuse anything. It doesn't ask for anything. It's just the full, unvarnished truth of what happened that day, as told by our daughter. I owed you that much. She looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. Chloe told you. Yes. It took her months because my sister and mother made sure every attempt was interrupted. I was blind, Isabella. I was a fool. I chose the familiar lie over the beautiful, complicated truth that was you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Do you have any idea what it feels like, Arthur? To be accused of such cruelty. To be thrown out of a home and a family you loved, by the man who swore to protect you. To have your character annihilated in a single, unjust moment. The question hung in the air, deserved and devastating. I can't imagine, I said, my own voice thick. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I was the one who made you feel that way. I'm not here to ask for a second chance. I'm here to tell you that I see you now, clearly. I see the woman who is strong enough to build this. I gestured around the pharmacy, after having her heart broken. I see the woman who was so good to my daughter. I see the woman I was too much of a coward to deserve. I turned to leave, the weight of my loss crushing me. Arthur. I stopped, my hand on the door. She picked up the letter. I'll read this. That's all I can promise. It was a thread of hope, thinner than a filament, but it was enough for now. Weeks passed. I focused on Chloe, on rebuilding our trust. We started family therapy. We talked about Clara openly, and we talked about Isabella, too, acknowledging the hurt and the love that still remained. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. I read your letter. Meet me. The Botanical Gardens. Sunday, 10 a.m. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sunday arrived after an eternity of waiting. I found her on a bench in the rose garden, the very place I had once asked her to marry me. She looked beautiful, her strength visible in the set of her shoulders. She didn't smile when she saw me. Chloe called me, she said without preamble. She told me the same story you wrote. She apologized for not trying harder. She shouldn't have had to, I said firmly. The failure was mine, not hers. Isabella nodded, seeming to accept that. I believe you, she said softly. I believe that you were manipulated. But Arthur, believing you and trusting you are two different things. The man I loved wouldn't have sent me away without a hearing. He would have fought for me. You're right, I agreed, sitting beside her but keeping a respectful distance. That man was broken by grief and manipulated by his family. He's gone. I'm trying to build a new one who listens, who questions, and who fights for what's right, not just what's familiar. She was silent for a long time, watching the bees hum around the roses. I've built a good life, Arthur. A life I'm proud of. It's peaceful. It's mine. I know. I would never ask you to give that up. Then what are you asking for? A chance to prove I've changed. Not as your fiancé. Not even as your boyfriend. Just as a man who is deeply, profoundly sorry, and who would like the privilege of earning back a fraction of your trust, one honest conversation at a time. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. It would have to be very, very slow. The pace is yours. Always. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the wall of her anger had a crack. Chloe would like that, she said finally. She misses our family dinners. A sob of relief caught in my throat. So do I. That was the beginning of our second, more careful beginning. We started with coffee. Then, with Chloe present, a movie night. The first time Isabella laughed in my home again, the sound was like rain after a long drought. The path was not smooth. There were nights when the hurt would resurface for her, when she would withdraw, and I had to learn to give her space without panic. There were times when my own guilt threatened to swallow me, and she, in her incredible grace, would be the one to tell me we couldn't live in the past. A year later, on a quiet evening with no grand fanfare, I asked her to marry me again. This time, it was in our kitchen, with Chloe beaming beside us. Isabella Rossi, I said, holding a simple, new ring. I don't offer you a perfect life. I offer you my imperfect, but fiercely loyal and finally clear-eyed heart. I offer you a partnership where your voice will always be the loudest in my ear. Will you build a new family with us? She took my face in her hands, her eyes shining with tears of joy, not sorrow. Yes, Arthur Pendleton. I will. We were married in a small ceremony in our backyard. Chloe was our officiant. As we exchanged vows, I didn't promise a life without storms. I promised that when they came, I would always stand by her side, and I would always believe her first. The lesson was carved into my soul: trust must be earned, but it must also be given. And sometimes, the hardest battles, and the most precious victories, are fought not in boardrooms, but in the quiet space of a wounded heart, choosing to hope again. The first years of our second-chance marriage were a conscious, deliberate construction. We didn't fall back into old patterns, we built new ones, with the blueprints drawn from our past mistakes. Our home became a sanctuary of open communication. We had weekly family meetings where any topic, no matter how small, was granted respect and attention. Chloe, blossoming into a sharp-witted teenager, often presided with a dry humor that made Isabella and me exchange proud, amused glances. My relationship with my mother and sister remained a complex, fenced-off territory. They were not part of our daily lives. They received invitations to Chloe's birthday parties and school plays, but they were guests, not participants. The boundaries were firm, and they knew a single misstep, a whispered doubt about Isabella, would sever the tenuous connection completely. It was a peace, but a fragile, armistice-like peace. Isabella's apothecary flourished, becoming a beloved community hub. She never took a penny of my money for it, a point of pride I had learned to admire rather than challenge. Her success was entirely her own, a testament to the strength I had once failed to see. The true test of our rebuilt foundation came from an unexpected direction, years later. It was a Tuesday, and I was working from my home office when my phone lit up with Diana's name. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Our calls were scheduled, polite, and infrequent. Arthur, her voice was strained, stripped of its usual careful composure. It's Mom. She's had a stroke. They're at Crestwood General. It's bad. I ended the call and sat in the silence, the news a stone dropped into the still waters of our carefully managed life. This wasn't just a medical crisis, it was a moral one. The woman who had orchestrated our heartbreak was dying. I found Isabella in her study, reviewing inventory reports. I stood in the doorway, and she looked up, her smile fading as she read my face. What's wrong? It's my mother. A stroke. She's in the hospital. Isabella's expression didn't harden, but it became still, like the surface of a pond before a storm. She placed her pen down carefully. I see. Diana is there. She's panicked. And what do you want to do, Arthur? Her question wasn't an accusation, it was a check-in, a testament to how far we'd come. I need to go, I said, the truth of it undeniable. She is my mother. But I won't go without you. Not into that lion's den. We face things together now, or we don't face them at all. She stood up and came to me, placing a hand on my chest, over the heart that belonged to her. Then we go together. At the hospital, the scene was a grim echo of the past. Diana looked up from her chair beside the hospital bed, her eyes red-rimmed. She flinched almost imperceptibly when she saw Isabella beside me, her hand in mine. Our mother looked small and ancient against the white sheets, a network of tubes connecting her to beeping machines. The formidable Eleanor Pendleton was gone, replaced by a fragile shell. Diana's apology was whispered, desperate. Arthur. Isabella. I'm so sorry. For everything. All of it. I was just so afraid. Isabella finished for her, her voice quiet but firm. We know. I looked at my sister, truly looked at her. The jealousy and manipulation had aged her, carving lines of bitterness that even fear couldn't erase. The dynamic had shifted irrevocably. I was no longer the little brother to be managed, but the patriarch of my own family, the one holding the power she so desperately craved. We stayed for an hour, a silent, uncomfortable vigil. As we prepared to leave, a weak sound came from the bed. Eleanor's eyes were open, hazy with medication, but they found mine. "Arthur," she rasped. I moved closer. "I'm here, Mother." Her gaze drifted past me, landing on Isabella. A struggle seemed to occur within her, a battle between a lifetime of pride and the stark clarity of mortality. Her hand twitched on the blanket. "The bucket," she whispered, the words slurred but intelligible. It was clean. The confession, coming from the source of all the lies, was more shocking than any accusation. It was the final, missing piece of the truth, offered not as a plea for forgiveness, but as a simple, stark fact before the end. Isabella's grip on my hand tightened. She gave a single, slow nod, an acknowledgement, not an absolution. "Thank you for telling us, Eleanor," she said, her voice impossibly gracious. We left the hospital under a pall of shared history. In the car, Isabella was quiet, staring out the window at the passing city. "Are you okay?" I asked, my hand covering hers. "I'm free," she said, turning to me with tears in her eyes. I thought I was before, but I think a part of me always wondered if there was some sliver of truth, some reason for what they did. Now I know. It was all a lie. A deliberate, cruel lie. She took a shaky breath. And she knew it. All these years, she knew. Eleanor Pendleton passed away 3 days later. The funeral was a small, somber affair. Diana, now truly alone, looked lost. After the service, she approached us. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice hollow. "That's up to you, Diana," I said. "You can be an aunt to Chloe. You can be a sister to me. But you will never again have a vote in my marriage or my life. The price of your presence is your silence and your respect. Can you live with that?" She looked from me to Isabella, and for the first time, I saw not manipulation, but a genuine, weary surrender. "Yes," she whispered. "I can." Life moved forward. Diana, true to her word, maintained a respectful, if distant, relationship with us. She became a slightly awkward but reliable aunt to Chloe, sending thoughtful birthday gifts and remembering to ask about her college applications. The day we dropped Chloe off at Stanford was one of the proudest and most heart-wrenching of my life. As we watched our brilliant, resilient daughter walk toward her dorm, her future wide open, Isabella slipped her hand into mine. "We did it, Arthur," she whispered. "We broke the cycle." I looked at this woman, this pharmacist, this entrepreneur, this survivor who had chosen to love me again despite every reason not to. The journey had been paved with betrayal, heartbreak, and difficult truths. But it had led us here, to this moment of quiet triumph. The past was a ghost, acknowledged but no longer feared. The future was ours, built not on a foundation of perfect bliss, but on something far more durable, earned trust, hard-won forgiveness, and a love that had been tested in fire and emerged, not unscarred, but unbreakable.